your accuracy is quite good. We can make it even better by bringing it from that 70% accuracy to 85%. This is Dave, and he's looking to go from a 144 to a 165 in the next 3 months. My name is Steve Schwartz, and I've been teaching the LSAT for the past 20 years. Today, Dave's going to bring me his biggest LSAT challenges, and I'll help him address them as he looks to improve by more than 20 points. Tell me a little bit about where you're scoring right now, and then what's your ultimate goal score?
I have targeted one law school. That's the University of Buffalo, just because for my life and my circumstance, that's the one that's appropriate. My original concept was that I needed to score within the median of the score band for the class of 2024. The median score was 156 for that class. So during my preparation, I spent 3 months working through the LSAT materials that were provided on the Law Hub's website. And I was scoring my simulated exams were bringing me in the 152 to 154 range. And so my thought was, if I get a 153 or higher, I'd just submit my application and away we go. Unfortunately, I got a 144 on the February exam, and so I engaged your services. I've been working through these, and I haven't done any full-length practice tests since I took the exam, but I've done sections. And if you loosely extrapolate out those sections, I'm right back in the same, well, I'm a little higher actually. Yesterday I calculated we did right about 158 is somewhere that I'm shaking out. And that of course is a very squishy number.
Remind me, when you're taking the test, I know when we spoke before, you were aiming for April,
right? Which
is just about a month away. Are you still shooting for that?
No.
1 month time frame? What are you aiming for now?
I'm going for June.
Okay, tell me more about why.
That was based on 2 conversations, really. One was with the admissions counselor at UB, who said, rather than retaking in April, I think you should give yourself until June to get the score that you want. That was a little frustrating because the context of the conversation was like, what's the score I need to get into UB? It's a mid-tier school. I'm a return learner. I'm paying full price. I've got a ton of life experience and volunteer experience, I'm sure. Plus, I've got some pretty good recommendations, so I think I'm a shoo-in. But I want to, partly this is for myself, to prove that, like, okay, I can score well on the entrance exams, and I don't want to give them any reason to refuse me. And then another conversation with a friend who's a UB graduate said honestly, do you expect that you're going to be doing anything differently on the April exam than you did on the February exam? And I thought about that, and I thought, 3 months gives me the opportunity to change my approach and to try something new, rather than repeating the same cycle and then just retaking in April. So, if it was an anomalous 10-point drop in my score, that possibly could have changed. But why not take the time and put in the work and really kind of prove to myself? A little bit more background on why this is gratifying to me. I've had a ton of fun studying for the LSAT.
It's great.
My background is in the physical sciences, so I'm kind of thinking about patent law is something that I'd like to pursue. And so it has been a process of identifying a major entrance exam, the LSAT, and working out a process to address that and engage that and use my brain again. And it's been a ton of fun. So I kind of want this score for me, maybe more than the school wants it.
I love what you're sharing here, because honestly, the folks who do the best on the LSAT are the ones who appreciate it and see it as not just an unfair obstacle to overcome, but as a challenge to take on that can actually level up your abilities, level up your understanding. The skills that you're building now with the LSAT are going to carry forward into law school and beyond. And it's not just a means to an end. There's something valuable about the process itself. And so I'm glad that you're approaching it this way. I think that also, that combined with the fact that you're allowing more time to achieve your fullest potential, is going to serve you well, both in admissions and in law school. When Dave said to me, I want the score more than the school wants the score, I loved that mindset shift, because changing from feeling external pressure to having internal drive is often the point at which things start clicking. When the LSAT becomes a personal challenge, something to conquer, rather than something you see as being an unfair gatekeeper, your prep gets way more focused, and it can even become fun, because the LSAT isn't just some obstacle holding you back from achieving your law school dreams. It could be that, but it could also be an opportunity for you to learn something new about yourself, to change your mindset, to level up, and develop the skills that are going to carry you forward into law school and beyond to give you success in your legal career. And in my experience, the students who get top scores, the students who get 170, 175 and above, they don't say the LSAT is stupid and has nothing to teach them and what's even the point of it. They see it as having some relationship to success in law school, success in their legal career, and they view it as a way to develop their critical thinking skills. So ask yourself, is the mindset of the LSAT being dumb? Is it truly serving me? Or would I be better served by a reframe around this as saying to myself, the LSAT has something to teach me and I have the skills and the ability to conquer this thing once and for all. Hey guys, real quick, a lot of you have been asking me, how can I join one of these LSAT study breakdown calls and get feedback on my approach? The only way is to join one of my LSAT coaching programs. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And now back to the show.
So the things that I have found useful and different about my time with your program here, the first thing actually was during our initial conversation, you actually pointed out that I've been going through this process alone. And that really hit me a lot harder than I thought it would, because I realized there was no one who was capable of speaking into my situation and saying, look, this is where you're going off the rails with this type of problem, or have you considered modifying your thinking this way? And both of those have happened during our tutoring sessions and then the live sessions and the study groups. So that's been encouraging. The other thing would be your laser approach. I recognize that the learning aspect is foundational, and I suspect that's part of the reason I had a weak performance, just because even though I had prepared adequately and I felt very comfortable taking the exam, the foundational underpinning wasn't as firm as it could have been. And so that's kind of what I've taken all your personalized study plan and knocked out all the questions here to prepare. And I'm just making sure that during my review, I kind of go back and refresh on that question type to look at the basic ideas behind that question type, tackling that. And then it's a little easier to identify whether my issue was the question stem, the stimulus, or my actual reasoning in that regard.
Dave's insight about studying in isolation was spot on. So many students go months without getting any feedback or correction on their mistakes, then they wonder why their scores aren't improving. It's far too easy when you're studying alone to look at the answer key, say to yourself, oh, I get it now. How could I have been so dumb? But then the students move on and do the exact same thing the next time around. But if you have someone else you can talk to, whether it's a coach or a study buddy or an instructor in a class, as long as you have someone you can talk to and articulate your thought process, then you have some accountability to make sure you're going deep enough during your review so that you can avoid making the same mistake again. So wherever you're at, however you're studying, make sure you find someone else who can give you that outside perspective, to give you that additional accountability to go deep enough in your review to extract the key insights that can help you avoid making those same mistakes the next time around. When it comes to getting a top LSAT score, doing your best on this, which areas of the exam are you finding your stronger sections and which areas are you finding to be your weaker areas?
Initially, if you'd asked me that question, let's say in November of last year, I would have said that my primary challenge would have been the logical reasoning sections, and that would have been because I was not able to attempt every question. My pacing on the questions was slow enough, and this was the case on the exam. I had to guess on about 5 questions per section. So the timing was really the big challenge. And looking at it now, I believe that probably stemmed from, being comfortable with the question types and really understanding what type of question this is, how do I approach this? And then you go through the process and arrive at your answer. So I expect to be faster in June. But right now, I would say maybe the part that I'm finding that's the weakest would be the reading comprehension sections. Possibly because I'm not paying as much attention to them. I am going to be seeking out an accommodation for extra time. And so I do tend to read slowly and process a little more slowly than maybe other folks. So I find my answer today is the reading comprehension. And that being said, the last tutoring session we did with the live tutor was on a reading comprehension thing, and I only missed one of the questions. So, it's not that it's difficult, it's just that maybe I'm not as comfortable with it and practicing as much with the RC.
Reading comp might be an area to devote a bit more attention to. We can definitely talk about that. Reading comp doesn't always feel like a weak area until you actually look at the data and devote the time there to collect that data. And Dave's strategy to shift more of his study time towards reading comp is exactly what more students need to do, because a third of your score comes from reading comp, so probably a third of your study time should go there also. At the same time though, if you're scoring roughly evenly between reading comp and logical reasoning, I'll recommend spending more time on logical reasoning every single time, because there are 2 scored sections of logical reasoning and only 1 scored section of reading comp. And so any gains you make in your understanding of logical reasoning will be doubled across the 2 sections. But you can't make an informed decision about where to devote your time until you look at the data, which is why you've got to collect the data and track your results in the first place. Are you finding that timing is the issue, or accuracy is the issue, or just the overall strategy and approach? What are you thinking there?
I think my overall strategy and approach is I'm comfortable with it. And of course, you don't know what you don't know, right? So there may be things that I think are important that really are not. But as far as the timing is concerned, I have noticed that the more comfortable I feel with the questions, the faster I'm able to complete them. And I did notice this in the run-up to the February exam, and I have noticed this during the logical reasoning section here. You know, when I drill down on question types, specific question types like most strongly supported, I'm finding that they're going a little more quickly. I haven't really paid a lot of attention to timing myself on each. When I do the drill sets, I don't do them timed. When I do the sections, I'm just following your study plan. I don't do that timed, because I realize that with repetition, I will get more efficient with my time. But as far as accuracy goes, like I'm at about a 70% accuracy rate right out of the gate, striving for the 80% and above.
Okay, good. And you've still got 3 months till the test, especially with the 2 additional months that you gave yourself. And so that's going to help a lot. How many hours per week are you putting in?
So I have a full-time job, and I also have 2 kids at home. So between responsibilities of getting food on the table and running kids to practices and my job and things, you know, I've shot to do about 3 hours 5 days a week is the idea. And you know, just these last 2 weeks I've been okay about that. There was one day I wasn't able to get to the studying because I had some things pop up for work, and so kind of during the other times I did that day's work, and then I went back and filled in individual components of the previous day. And so I really like Saturday because I'm able to crank for a little bit. You know, Sunday typically I will relax and take the Sabbath.
Okay, cool. So 3 hours a day, 5 days a week or so. You're balancing the LSAT with your full-time job and also with taking care of the kids. But you've got 3 months till test day. I wanted to get a little more clarity on score goals, because you mentioned that you wanted to get in that range for UB's median of around a 153, right? But then you mentioned that your PT, your most recent practice test, was a 158, right?
Yeah.
So would that not suggest that you're already above the benchmark of the goal that you need?
That would suggest that I'm already above the benchmark. I think really motivating me right now is the uncertainty of that 144, like what happened.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get, my worst fear, to tell you, is to just pull like a 149 or a 150 on test day. And I expect that won't happen, but I'm sure you run into students running scared. And I know it's a confidence issue, but I feel the more I can become comfortable with the material and confident in my abilities. Yesterday I was working some problems and I missed a necessary assumption question, and I had selected the correct answer, and then I went down through to review the other choices to positively eliminate them, my differential. And so I went through, and there's one that was a trap question, and I clicked on it, and then I went and show answer, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And you know, it's just one of those, oh shoot, this is still happening. So it could be the case that, you know, I'm gonna score better on this next exam, but why not? Why not just go balls out, you know, and just really see what I can do? I mean, partly for, you know, personal aspirations. I think that's a lot of what's driving this.
I totally get the feeling of a bad practice test result shaking you, destroying your confidence. I've been there myself. But here's what Dave is doing right. He's not reacting emotionally. He gave himself time, a strategy reset, and he started building the foundation the right way day this time around. And the thing is that LSAT scores fluctuate. Everybody has a bad day sometimes, and you don't want to overly index on any single practice test result. Instead, you want to take the average of your most recent 3 to 5 practice tests, and that'll give you a better indication of where you truly stand. And so if you're asking yourself in the final weeks before test day, am I ready? Should I go ahead and take it? Don't just look at one single practice test. Look back over your most recent 2, 3, even 4 weeks of practice test results, average them out, and then say to yourself, if I'm within a few points of my goal, I'm going to go ahead and take it. However, if I'm 10 points below my goal, then maybe I want to hold off and postpone to a later date. And the good news is, if you do postpone, if you do withdraw from the initial LSAT scheduled test date, law schools will never even know that you were scheduled for it, and it's no big deal. I agree. Let's go balls out. Let's get you the highest score possible so that if you're, let's say your PT average is a 163 going in June, worst case for whatever reason you dropped 5-10 points, you're still at or above the median.
Yeah.
This was a single data point of 158, or are there others that are also in the high 150s?
That is a single data point, and that's not I said it's a squishy data point, right?
Right.
That's an extrapolation. It's not I did not take a full practice test and score 158.
I have a number of different thoughts based on different things you've touched on. I'll hit as many as I can. So the first is, let's have you taking practice tests on a regular basis, not extrapolating from individual sections or accuracy for an individual section, because it's not enough to get the questions right. You got to get them right under test day conditions. So that means timed sections, strictly timed, and then building up to full exams, 4 sections in one sitting, 10-minute break between sections 2 and 3. That's your exam, not taking 4 sections and adding them up. So if we get you to a place where you've taken 5 practice tests over the course of a month, and that PT average is in the high 150s, low 160s, we could safely say that's where you are, then you're good to go in and take it in June. And then even if you drop 5 points or more because of a bad proctor, tech issues, nerves, anxiety, what have you, you're still safely above the median. That's the goal we want to get you to. Now, as for the question of how to get you there, you mentioned reading comp as an area that hasn't perhaps gotten as much attention as you might have liked to give it. So I'll recommend that over time you start shifting the ratio of your study time to be roughly a third reading comp, since reading comp is roughly a third of the test. And that means that first and foremost, you mentioned accuracy, right? You're good on strategy, but accuracy is still a bit low. So that means that if you're feeling comfortable on your approach of reading the passage, any notes that you're taking, perhaps going back to the passage text itself, questions, if you're feeling good on that, I won't touch that for now. We could touch that on that in the future. And of course, we have plenty of support for that in the program you're already in, with the live tutoring, with the classes, the videos, and all that. So Dave's going to keep a review journal now, not just marking what he missed, but why he missed it. And that alone is easily worth 5-10 points or more. It's what turns "I hope I don't miss this again" into "I won't miss this again." But until you're tracking your results and you have that bird's eye view of what mistakes you're making and why, you're probably just going to end up making the same mistakes again and again. And so keeping that review journal, keeping that error log is what gives you the data to make more informed decisions and extract those key insights to allow you to avoid falling for the same tricks and traps time after time. The idea of taking practice tests and the idea of reviewing is that you make your mistakes now, you get those questions wrong now, so you can learn from those mistakes and you won't make those same mistakes on test day when it truly counts. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about what your review process is currently like.
On the study guide, or the study plan that we laid out, I have been going through those questions, and I will put a check mark if I answer correctly, and then an X if I miss the question. I'll write down my answer, and then I will put the correct answer. And then, when I complete that section of questions, I go back and then I review each individual question and try to identify whether it was the question stem, the stimulus itself, or a processing flaw error. And so I'll pretty much go over the question until I understand where the error occurred and why the error occurred, and then I'll go on to the next one that I missed and do that. So that's been my process so far.
Okay, that all sounds good. Those are all things that you should do. I can't argue with any of that. My only question is this all happening in your head, or are you writing anything down or typing anything out?
Well, no, actually, what I've been doing is writing down on my list of practice questions, and then I'll go through. And so I guess one thing I could change about this process is an actual journal. I've heard you reference a journal quite a bit. I've not actually, I could begin to compile this into journal. Previously, like when I studied last fall, I was just compiling histograms of question types that I missed, so I knew where my weak question types were, and then I would just practice more of those. But now, I like your recommended review process a lot better, because I think it gets back to understanding the question itself. And was it the stimulus that tripped me up, or did I go outside the scope of the stimulus, or was this an error of the way I'm thinking about this? Was this a logical fallacy that I just messed up?
Right.
So
you're right that we are not logical beings by nature. There was the scientific revolution only a couple hundred years ago, right? Prior to that time, we didn't even have science in terms of a rigorous process as a tool available to us yet. There were prototypes and proto-science, of course, prior, but with Aristotle and whatnot. But we are not logical beings. We're prone to logical fallacies. The LSAT exploits them. We have to actually learn better habits and how to avoid bad habits. There's a lot of great general resources out there on logic, like a rule book for arguments and Logic Made Easy are two non-LSAT books that are good for pre-LSAT prep. Again, a rule book for arguments, Logic Made Easy. I'm mentioning them just in case they're of interest, but the thing is that when your LSAT is coming up in 3 months or even 6 months, I usually recommend not using those kinds of books and instead focusing more on LSAT specific material. Just because the LSAT, there are 58 numbered exams in the new format, plenty of real LSAT material to work off of, that you don't need to go outside of that. And there are enough LSAT resources available specifically for the LSAT, like my program, which you're already in, where we've taken the time to build LSAT related lessons on things like formal logic, on things like classic logical fallacies, all of which are specifically tailored for the exam that you're going to be taking. And so I would say exhaust all the LSAT specific material available to yourself first.
Right.
You won't be able to get through all of it in just 3 months anyway.
Right.
But if you wanted some casual beach reading or something that you didn't want to take a pen and pencil or pen and paper, look at an LSAT book, you just wanted something more broad, that stuff would be fine. It wouldn't be bad, but the thing is that these formal logic proofs, like what you'll see with modus ponens and PQ and all that,
right,
with the squiggle tilde sort of thing for not, that is great if you have unlimited time, but it's not efficient for an exam that is time constrained like the LSAT.
My thought was a cursory, exploration of logic, just maybe a few rules here and there, not the exhaustive, secondary logic required for philosophy or coding.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you're looking, just to circle back on what you said earlier on, the histograms, the idea of making some sort of analysis of the particular question types you're getting wrong. That's definitely valuable. That'll help a lot for logical reasoning, of course, if you can track things better, keeping it all compiled in a single journal. But the thing is that'll help with logical reasoning because question types are more of a focus there, perhaps.
Okay.
But then in reading comprehension, it's not quite as directly relevant because you're not going to drill reading comp questions in isolation. Typically, they're all related back to the general passage. So if you note certain passage topics or certain passage structures, that might be an indication of where to spend your time. But I think a lot of it's just going to come down to noting the traps in what you're getting wrong and why. So why is a wrong answer choice tempting, and what makes that choice ultimately wrong? What makes a right answer seem unappealing to you, and what ultimately makes it correct? And when you engage in more of a structured journal rather than just asking yourself some broad questions, you can then better highlight the key takeaways of what mistakes to avoid going forward.
Okay,
So I would encourage you to keep it organized in a journal with a clear structure so that you're answering the same questions almost in a checklist format every single time.
Great. Wonderful information. I think the idea of using a journal to ensure that you're not repeating the same approach, you are actually trying something different with every new approach is a good thing.
Hey guys, real quick, if you're just getting started with your LSAT prep or you're looking for a quick refresher, grab your free Easy LSAT cheat sheet linked below this video. I've packed it full of concrete, actionable tactics you can apply to your LSAT prep right away to get a quick score boost, and again, it's 100% free. And now back to the show. So what would you say is the biggest takeaway or insight you've gotten from our call today?
So maybe the most glaring is that I need to start putting together a journal so that I can reflect back on what I have done. Also, maybe that will make my journey apparent if I look at the journal. And so that as it applies to logical reasoning or reading comprehension, you can kind of see your process and you have the ability to change it now because you can see it there on paper. The other real takeaway was, you've been very encouraging. I might be closer to where I want to be than I thought I was. And, it doesn't stop me from really working hard and pushing through. I did write down I wanted 165 as my target score, but I'd be certainly happy, in the 158 or above. I think maybe adding a dose of reality.
If we think about this as you're going from that low of what happened in February up to a 165, 144 to 165, a 21-point jump, your aptitude is clearly showing that you're capable of far beyond what happened in February. Your accuracy is quite good. We can make it even better by bringing it from that 70% accuracy to 85% through keeping the journal, through taking more timed sections and full-length exams, analyzing your mistakes, reviewing in depth, tracking your progress, taking full exams and timed sections on a consistent basis. That's what's going to get you the 20 points.
Great. Question for you. Have you had folks you worked with make these kind of changes?
Oh yeah, no, 20 points over the 3 months especially. If you can put in those 15 hours a week that you're doing and you just change the nature of your studying a bit, so rather than just tracking on that paper, keeping it organized in the journal, looking for the trends, highlighting the takeaways, and devoting a bit more time to reading comp than you have perhaps, that's going to be enough to get you there. If you're looking for the 20 points, it's going to come from the journal and from giving reading comp the attention it deserves. What I love about Dave's story is that it shows how to bounce back the right way. He didn't let a 144 define him. He didn't panic and immediately sign up for the next test. He stepped back, asked the hard questions, and rebuilt his approach from the ground up. And that's rare. A lot of students spiral after a disappointing score. They either double down on doing more of the same, or they give up altogether. But Dave's doing something smarter. He gave himself more time, not to cram, but to actually learn, to refine his pacing, to fix his review process, and most importantly, to build the confidence he needs to crush it on test day, not just once, but consistently. He's treating this like a long-term investment, not a one-and-done performance. And if you're watching this thinking, I've had a setback too, take a page from Dave's playbook. Push the date if you need to, fix the process, not just the result, track your progress, and get support. If you can do those 4 things, the next 10, 20 points or more are absolutely on the table. This is what it looks like to go from a score you're afraid of to a score you're proud of.